I have a home network using AT&T's Internet 1000 service. I am using the AT&T supplied BGW210-700 modem, put in pass-through or bridge mode. My primary network router is a mini PC with 2 Ethernet ports running the OPNSense router software. My initial setup was pretty simple. My BGW210 modem is plugged into the AT&T's fiber network via the ONT connector. The WAN port of my OPNSense router is plugged into the BG210 modem, and the LAN port is plugged into a switch that provides internet connectivity for my entire network. This was my initial network layout, which worked fine for me until recently. A couple weeks ago, there was an AT&T outage in my area that lasted for 2 days. While I was still able to get internet connectivity for some devices using my phone's hotspot, all of my home smart devices, including lights and even the garage door opener, were inoperable. Even though these outages are rare, more common are the Southern California Edison electrical outages in my building, and sometimes entire neighborhood, that take down the AT&T broadband service with them. So I figure I needed a backup plan. After a bunch of research, I settled on a fairly simple plan. Add an LTE cellular modem to my existing network, enable it as a WAN gateway, and use the OPNSense failover functionality to switch to it for internet connectivity when the AT&T wired service goes down. This new plan necessitated that I obtain an LTE cellular modem as well as wireless plan for the modem. I opted for the NETGEAR LTE LM1200 cellular modem because it seemed fairly simple and supports both all of my current providers, AT&T and T-Mobile, plus a couple others. I went with an AT&T wireless plan, but after seeing my first bill, I may have to rethink that one. Okay, so once you plug the NETGEAR LTE modem into your PC, open up your browser, and go to the IP address that is in the Quick Start Guide, you will see this screen. On the bottom of the modem, if you turn it upside down, you will see a password, and that is what you will use to sign in here. Of course, I've already done this, and I've already saved my password. All right, once you log in, you'll see this dashboard screen, which is showing you what's coming through the wire line and what's coming through the LTE line. I could actually use this device to do failover, but there's a number of reasons why I don't. I'm not going to get into that right now. So I'm going to use my OPNSense router to actually do the failover routing. But as you can see here, you could actually use the device itself to do the routing by simply plugging in the WAN connection into the WAN port in this modem, and then plugging in your LAN connection into the LAN port of this. But as I said, that's not what we're going to do. So in initial setup of this thing, you're going to go to settings, and as you see, there's a bunch of stuff here. Not going to get into the details. If you decide to use this particular brand, you'll get a user guide, and it'll kind of step you through initially getting it set up. But the big points I want to point out is you'll want to go to settings, mobile, Again, I leave the preferences to default, network mode, automatic, auto connect, always. But the big thing is APN. uh, this is probably where you will have the problem with it connecting to your wireless provider. Mine's is AT&T, and so the APN I use is ATT Broadband. The name is just user defined, so I just called it AT&T. And the other thing here, as you can see, I'm going to use the IPv4 setup. Protocol for internet. You do have the option for V6, but I'm going to use V4 to keep it simple. And also because the only way I'm going to be able to get this to work on my LAN is to use IPv4, since that is the only protocol that I'm using. I'm not using V6. All right, so check the APN, make sure you have the one for your provider. Next, if we go to advanced LAN, here where you see IP address where it's grayed out, this is where you would change the IP address. So I've already changed mine to an IP on my LAN. In fact, it is one IP address under my gateway. My gateway is 254, and I set this at 253. And just a word of advice, in order to do this, you're going to have to go to router mode, submit, and then this is going to open up for you to be able to change it. I don't want to do that here because I don't feel like going through all those changes, but I'm just letting you know so you don't spend 30 minutes like I did trying to figure out how to change the IP address. Again, you have to change to router mode, submit, and then you can change it. And I would just make a couple of notes that do not, well, I don't use DHCP. In fact, I'm using this in bridge mode. So when you're in router mode, I would suggest turning off DHCP, particularly if you're basically just going to, if you're not going to use this device as a router, but basically a gateway, a bridge to your second wide area network, which would be the cellular network. And I think that's it. Again, failover, leave it at default because, you know, unless you're going to use this device for failover, then you're basically going to want the mobile broadband running, which is what I should check, but I'm just leaving it auto because it's going to run the wireless broadband anyway, unless you have a wired connection plugged in, and I don't. I'm sorry, a wired WAN connector plugged in, which I don't. I use Google's 8.8.8.8 for ping confirmation, and that is it for, you know, the important stuff. So just make sure, you know, whatever changes you make, you know, you submit it, and it will restart, and then the changes will be applied. So again, I have now given this an IP address on my network. So my next step from here will be to unplug this from the PC and plug it into my network. And theoretically, when I then go to the IP address I have just given it on my network, it will work. And guess what, folks? I've already tested it, and it does work. Now that you can access your cellular modem on your local LAN, you are almost ready to configure the failover in the OPNSense router. You will next need to add the cellular modem IP address as a gateway in your router. So, log into your OPNSense router and go to System Gateways Single. Locate the plus sign icon and click on it. Fill in the information on the page. You can use my example as a guide. Gateway name, description interface, which will be LAN. Address family will be IPv4. Enter the IP address you gave the cellular modem. And finally enter a monitor IP. As you can see from my example, I'm simply using a Google DNS IP. When finished, save this page and accept changes. You should now see your new gateway listed on this page. However, to make sure it is properly monitored, you will have to go to System Diagnostics Services and turn on the depinger for the gateway. Once your cellular modem is successfully added as a gateway, you are ready to set up failover. To recap, so far, you have tested your cellular modem and verified that it is connecting to your wireless provider and providing data. You have assigned an IP address to your cellular modem and physically connected it to your network. You have, in your router, configured the cellular modem as a WAN gateway. You now have two WAN gateways in your router, the first for your wired broadband internet connection, the second for your wireless internet connection through your cellular modem. You know the names of each gateway in your OPNSense router. In my case, WAN_GW for the wired connection, and WAN_GW02 for the cellular connection. To configure failover in the OPNSense router, I will follow the multi-WAN failover instructions from the OPNSense wiki and documentation site. Step 1. Add monitor IPs to the gateways. So we go to System, Gateways, Single, and we click on the edit symbol for the first gateway, which is WAN GW. That's the active wired gateway. And we enter in a monitor IP. As you can see here, I'm using the Google IP 8.8.8.8. So, boom, save that, and repeat the process for your second gateway. In our case, it is WAN_GW02. Again, click the little pencil edit icon, and the monitor IP in this one is 8.8.4.4. Save that, and our step 1, as you see, is completed. Step 2. Add gateway group. So we're going to go to System, Gateways, Group. And you see we land on this page here. So in order to add a group, now I've already created the group, as you can see, but you click on the little plus icon to add a group and you get this page. So essentially I'm going to go and edit the group I already have, and as you see, it's basically the same page. So we give it a group name, and I just use the default group name that's in the OPNSense documentation. You then assign the gateways tier levels. So your primary gateway, in this case, mine is WAN_GW, would be tier 1. And that is the WAN, my WAN gateway interface, the AT&T broadband wired connection. And my second interface here will be tier 2. In other words, tier 1 is what we're monitoring all the time, and when it goes down, then we drop to tier 2. And that is the WAN_GW02 the gateway, which is basically the cellular modem interface. And as you see here, the cellular modem interface is connected to the LAN switch, and that's why we call it Interface LAN Gateway, LTE. Now, this is the name I gave it so that I recognize what it is, although I only have 2 gateways. So anyway, so we only assign these 2 gateways here, tier 1 and tier 2. The trigger level, I use member down. You can use packet loss, and you would enter what % of packet loss you want, high latency, packet loss, or high latency. But I just choose member down, which means 100% packet loss. And description, I just call it my failover group. Okay, and then I save that, and I apply changes, and voila, it is done. Step 3, configure DNS for each gateway. This one's pretty simple. You're just going to go to Systems, Settings, General. That page will already exist. And then you go down to the networking section, and then you will see a column which says DNS server. So essentially what you're going to do here is put the DNS server that you want each gateway to use. So as you see, what I've done here is it's set up the first gateway to use 8.8.8.8, and the second gateway to use 8.8.4.4. That's pretty much all there is to it. As you scroll down to the second part of the page, just leave all that, default. We're not going to select any of those except for allow DNS server list to be overwritten by DHCP /PPP on WAN. I don't even think I have that running, but to be honest with you, I don't even know what that means. But it's working, so we're good. So anyway, save this, and that's it. Step 3 is completed. Step 4, policy-based routing. Go to Firewall, Rules, LAN. From this list of firewall rules, firewall LAN rules, we need to update the default LAN pass rule by changing the gateway from default to our new gateway group. So once on this page, look for the rule with the description, default allow LAN to any rule. And we want to click on the pencil next to this rule. We're going to leave everything the same. So scroll down to gateway here. Now, when you first come here, this rule is one of the rules that's set up automatically by OPNSense, and it's going to say default. And all you have to do is click the pull down and select the WAN, the gateway group that we just created. Just like that. And then click Save. After you click Save, make sure you click Apply Changes. And now you have updated the default allow LAN to any rule, and you have completed step 4 of this process. Step 5, add allow rule for DNS traffic. We're still at firewall rules LAN. We need to add a rule just above the default LAN allow rule to make sure traffic to and from the firewall on port 53 DNS is not going to be routed to the gateway group that we just defined. According to the documentation, the default allow LAN rule we modified in step 4 will utilize the gateway group for all traffic coming from our LAN network. This also means that traffic intended for the firewall itself will be routed in the wrong direction. That is why step 5 is needed for our DNS traffic going to and coming from our DNS forwarder on the firewall itself. So as you can see, I've basically already created this rule, but I placed it above the previous rule from step 4. So needless to say, in order to add a new rule, you're going to click the add, and that's going to allow you to go in and fill this in. But we're going to pretend that I just clicked add by clicking edit, again, since I've already created this rule. Now, the documentation lists particular details that we need to change. So starting at the top, action is going to be a pass. Disable, no comment on that, so we're leaving that as default. Quick, no comment on that, leaving that as default. Interface, LAN. Direction, it actually doesn't say in the documentation what the direction is. I'm assuming it's in, since the previous rule in step 4 that we modified was a in direction. TCP IP version, of course IPv4. Protocol, TCP UDP. Source, any. Let's see, now for destination, the documentation had assumed a firewall at IP1 192.168.1.1, but basically we need to select this firewall, and of course that's available, so that's what I selected. And now the destination port range, we only want DNS, which is 53, but we can select it directly as DNS protocol, TCP protocol, and it doesn't say anything about logging packets. The category is DNS. Description, I put allow DNS. And that's user defined. So I'm just saying, okay, we're allowing DNS through this firewall. And the only difference here, the big difference here, I should say, is that for gateway, we are using default. So essentially, we need DNS to go through the firewall as it did before we before we changed the rule in step 4 to use the gateway group rather that we created. So that's all we need to do here. And of course, we want to click save, right? And then apply changes. Now, fortunately for us, I already created this, so it's already in the position. We need to make sure that this rule, the allow DNS rule we just created, is above the default allow LAN to any rule that we modified in step 4. And you will need to use the OPNSense function for moving the rule. Essentially, if this rule was down at the bottom here and I wanted it to be at the top, I would select the rule that I wanted it above, and then I would click this little arrow and that would place this rule above. Anyway, this is the OPNSense router software structure, and you'll just need to read up on how to move rules up and down in that manual. It's beyond my pay grade here. I just want to show you that we needed to create that rule, and we need to put that rule up above the default allow LAN to any rule. Once that's done, we have completed step 5, and our failover should be working at this point.